I'm your host, Grayson Brulte. Welcome to another episode of SAE Tomorrow Today, a show about emerging technology and trends in mobility with the leaders and innovators to make it all happen. On today's episode, we're absolutely honored to be joined by Joseph Vellone, CEO ChargeScape. On today's episode, we'll explore how ChargeScape is using smart charging and vehicle-to-grid technology to lower costs for drivers and strengthen the power grid. We hope you enjoy this episode. Joseph, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
You're doing something really cool. EVs are cool and data's cool. So you're combining two really wonderful, interesting parts of my curiosity. For our listeners who might not know, who's ChargeScape? How would you explain your company to a listener?
Yeah, I would describe ChargeScape as the connective tissue between electric vehicles and the power grid. And really what we offer is a software platform that connects to all the electric vehicles out there for the brands that we cover and provides data in real time into our central algorithm that is then used to predict consumer charging patterns, but also takes data in from power grids and optimizes EV charging with the consumer's consent, with the driver's consent, to deliver the most grid-friendly charging, but also deliver charging that's going to be lowest cost for the driver, for the consumer, ultimately to save EV drivers money.
Does your software live on, since you're partnered with OEMs, does it live on the vehicle side? Does it live on the charging infrastructure side? Where does it live? And then how does it all come together and connect?
Yeah, so it lives in the cloud. It lives in the ChargeScape cloud. And the way that we sort of disseminate our software and the signals and flow of data is onto the vehicle itself. So as you mentioned, we work with automakers. We are a joint venture of BMW, Ford, Honda, and Nissan. They're investors in ChargeScape. We work with their vehicles, but we also have contractual relationships with other auto manufacturers, including Tesla and Stellantis, which makes Jeep, Dodge, Ram, Alfa Romeo vehicles. And it all works the same way. We obtain data directly from the electric vehicle. So every EV has got a miniature SIM card inside of it. The same thing that connects your cell phone to a 4G or 5G network, your EV has got that. And that allows us to obtain data from the vehicle and then also occasionally send an optimized charging schedule to the vehicle to save the consumer money.
Is the optimization, does that come down to, because you and I know this, utility rates differ depending on the county, the city, location. Is all that data going in there so the consumer of a BMW, a Ford, a Honda, a Nissan, a Stellantis, they can make a informed decision of where they might want to charge because one might be more affordable than the other?
That's right. As you said, optimal charging differs a lot depending on which part of the country you live in and what part of the grid you're on. And even within a certain part of the country or the power grid, the best charging time is probably going to vary according to the hour, the day, the season. It's a lot of complexity for an EV driver to manage. And what we're trying to do at ChargeScape is, on behalf of the automotive partners that work with us, make the EV charging experience as simple as possible for the EV driver. No one wants to think about optimizing their EV charging. They just want to plug in and return to a fully charged vehicle. And ideally, have that charge be delivered at the lowest possible cost. And so what our algorithm does is combine all that data from national parts of the grid, local parts of the grid, data on price, renewable energy availability, local constraints on a specific part of the grid, like maybe a transformer or a substation, things that the typical EV driver doesn't want to think about and shouldn't have to think about. That goes into our algorithm. We're also getting data from the vehicle. We're getting its battery level when you plug it in. We're getting the consumer preference for how much juice they want to add to the vehicle, right? Do you want your battery charged to 100%? Do you want it 90%, 80%? The consumer, the driver might also set what we call like a departure time or a ready by time of, hey, charge my car ASAP, or, I just plugged it in at home and I just needed to be ready by 7 o'clock the next morning so I can go to work. So all of that goes into our algorithm, and that algorithm then determines the optimal charging schedule for that specific vehicle, which we then pass back on to the vehicle to charge in that way, in a way that is going to save the driver as much money as possible and ideally also deliver a more friendly charge for the grid.
But the big question, there's a lot to unpack there, but the big question from the business standpoint, how much of your day do you spend thinking about reliability?
I would say the majority of my day. And I think about reliability from two different angles. I think about the reliability of our service that we provide EV drivers. And that's the most important thing, is making sure that EVs are charged by the time the driver needs it. That is our number one goal at ChargeScape. And it's the thing that we always have to make sure we are getting right. The other side of reliability is, of course, grid reliability. I think it's been a lot in the media a lot recently, whether it is the unprecedented electricity demand coming from data centers or also from EVs and other electrified devices that were around a few years ago. Our nation's power grid is definitely under a lot of strain right now and facing a lot of reliability issues that have been magnified by climate change and extreme weather. And rather than look at EVs as a liability for the power grid and something that could add strain or potentially even cause a blackout if there's too many EVs charging at once in a specific part of the grid, we at ChargeScape tried to kind of flip it on its head and actually look at how EVs could serve as a grid asset. So actually reducing demand to ease some constraints on the grid when it's overloaded, and through bidirectional charging, actually export power from EV batteries to supply the power grid when extra electricity is needed.
Those are all valid points. At the end of the day, I mean, so you're building world-class technology, but the consumer's finicky. I remember when EVs first came out, somebody wouldn't leave their garage, I'm paraphrasing, unless it was 100%. No, I might get stranded somewhere. And then it's like, okay, I've got 30, 40. Okay, we're going to go there. And so I own an EV. I'm on my third one now, and I only go to 80% all the time. And then unless I'm going on a road trip, and you're just used to it, and you set it on a timer when I have it set. So when the utility rates go down, I charge it at home, it turns on then. Are you seeing anything in your data around the consumer preferences where in the early days, as I said earlier, it had to be 100%? It's like, oh, no. We're willing to go at lower charges. Are you seeing anything in the data around that?
Yeah, definitely. What we see on data on our platform is that the typical EV driver only wants their vehicle charged to somewhere between 70 and 90%. So yeah, that 80% that you mentioned is kind of like smack in the middle, probably closer to the average of what we see on our platform. We do see exceptions for sure. So, occasionally we'll see consumers set the charge level to 100%, and that's typically not every day. It might be before a road trip. We talk to EV drivers as well, and sometimes we'll see drivers consistently set the charge level to 100%. And yeah, it's because we have some folks on our platform who use ChargeScape services who are super commuters and actually have like a really long commute to and from work every day and need their battery charged to 100%. So yeah, we definitely see different profiles, different types of charging patterns. But ultimately, all of that data just goes into our algorithm, and you as an EV driver will get an optimal charge schedule tailored to your specific driving habits, charging habits, and preferences.
When you have that charging schedule, are there incentives built into that to encourage off-peak charging?
Yes, absolutely. So there's different incentives. A lot of utilities offer what's called like a time of use rate. So simply offering cheaper electricity during off-peak hours. And that's not just for electric vehicles, but for any sort of electricity consumption. But we also work with a number of utilities across the country that offer additional savings or cash back for specifically charging your EV during off-peak hours. So just as an example, we run a program with Eversource Energy in Connecticut. Customers there earn $25 a month with us for allowing us to schedule their vehicle to charge during off-peak hours, which is after 9 p.m. and up until 3 p.m. the next day. So a really long window. And so in addition to whatever savings they might be getting on their electricity bill, they're also getting $25 back each month by smart charging with ChargeScape.
So the financial incentive's great, but then the other thing I think a lot about is not having to think anymore. I think we're getting to a point where you don't have to think, oh, I forgot to charge it last night, where your software takes care of that. Scenario. Is that another incentive there where you're when you say you're optimizing their daily life or their vehicle use?
Certainly, some of the automakers we work with will send reminders to a driver to plug in, whether that is after the start of off-peak hours or just based on their specific charging patterns and behaviors. It's looking like, hey, like you should probably plug in because we know you're going to want your car charged at 80% tomorrow morning. So yeah, these are the kinds of things that automakers are looking to automate. I think you put it really well. No one wants to have to think about this stuff. You just want your car charged, just like you want your iPhone charged, right? And you don't really want to think about it. And really, ChargeScape was formed by these automakers as kind of like the software engine to automate a lot of this, a lot of the home charging pain points. We use an expression at ChargeScape: set it and forget it. I think that came from like an infomercial maybe 20, 30 years ago. But that's what we aim to deliver for EV drivers, is just a set it and forget it solution. Plug your car in, we'll take care of the rest of the complexity. You go about your day, or maybe you go to sleep, wake up in the morning to a fully charged vehicle, and it's been charged with the cheapest electricity possible that maximizes your savings.
Which you're happy. So you're optimizing the consumer's life. And then obviously, since you're a joint venture with some of the most important, significant OEMs in the world, are they looking at that data to optimize battery? Perhaps we don't have to put the 400-mile range battery in based on its behavior. We can cram a vehicle, say, a 220-mile range. Are they looking at any of that data to optimize their product as well?
Yeah, I think one of the coolest things about ChargeScape is, as you said, we work directly with these automakers, and we do so on a daily basis. And the data and learnings that come from our platform do directly influence their product roadmaps and decisions. And that can be everything from the way that their app is designed to the way a vehicle is designed, and specific parts or components in the vehicle, particularly around the battery, are designed or installed, all the way to very long-term sort of decisions around battery size and range for future electric vehicle models.
And then we alluded to it earlier, the other leg of the stool is utilities. And if we go back to the early days, they weren't very nice to electric vehicles. It was the hurry up, wait and get in line show. Are you seeing a thawing of dealing with utilities where they're actually embracing this? Or is it now, no, we got data centers now. They make us more money. We got to prioritize them. Where is this going, since there is a massive energy usage that's arrived that makes EVs look very minuscule in the grand scheme of things?
Yeah, look, I think ultimately utilities are excited about anything that increases demand for their product, which are electrons. And so whether that's EVs or data centers, I've seen a lot of enthusiasm coming from utilities. Now, look, the EV boom happened a little bit before the data center boom. And so maybe 3-4 years ago, before data centers became such a hot topic, utilities were talking a lot about electric vehicles. And number one, how can we encourage our customers to go electric? Number two, how can we make the charging experience as simple and seamless as possible for our customers, whether that's at home or away from home? And then number three, actually, these things are batteries on wheels. And is there a way that we can actually leverage them to increase grid reliability in the face of things like extreme weather and other sources of demand, which eventually ended up being data centers? And very interestingly, we're working with a utility out in California actually using EV batteries to power data centers. So it's been really interesting to sort of see this thing come full circle.
Wow. Are those decommissioned batteries, or are they active batteries of the individuals working on the job site? What does that look like?
Yeah, so these are live EV batteries contained in the Nissan Leaf, which was one of the first vehicles actually on the market to have bidirectional charging, or what we call vehicle to grid capabilities. And they're commercial vehicles parked at a commercial site that are stationary for a good part of the day. And in this part of the California grid, actually in Silicon Valley, there's a lot of new data centers being built, a lot of data center demand that the utility simply can't keep up with. And it could take 2 to 3 years, let's say, to build like a local generation source, like whether that's a generator or it's a small like gas-fired power plant. Or you could actually take all of the energy storage that you've got already, and whether those are utility scale batteries that Tesla runs, or those are electric vehicle batteries, and there's certainly plenty of electric vehicles in California around Silicon Valley, and actually export that power when the vehicle is not being used to meet that incremental demand from data centers, and pay EV drivers, pay the consumer for that power, the same way that a power plant operator would be paid. And ultimately, this can net consumers thousands of dollars a year, depending on how much electricity they're willing to export.
So on the export side, so let's say the individual, the consumer says, okay, I don't want to go below 20%, but I say I have 70% of the battery. I'm willing to let it go down that 50%. Then they get, it's called a royalty check, or they get a royalty check for that 50%.
That's exactly right. Yeah, depending on how much they're willing to export and what the price of electricity is, during that time, they will get a check at the end of the month or at the end of the year for all of the electricity that they exported. And it's really interesting to see actually some EV drivers even engaging in arbitrage, particularly in California, where it's pretty sunny. There's a lot of solar, actually filling up their EV battery, charging their EV battery with solar power during the daytime from their own solar panels, whether that's at home or at a commercial site, filling up those EV batteries with 100% free electricity from the sun, and then selling that electricity back to the power grid during other hours when electricity is in high demand, when data centers may be, ramping up, and actually making even more money from it.
There's always a market. And let's never forget that. We have prediction markets, we have energy markets. There's always a market for something. So this is hypothetical, but you've opened the door, so I'm going down it. This is super curiosity. So somebody's running price arb on this, and let's just say they're getting, I'm going to use number $100 a month. And since you're partnering with BMW, Ford, Honda, Nissan, Stellantis, Tesla, and they all have their own leasing arms, could that check just go to reduce their lease payment at some point in the future? So instead of, because then to me, now you're really incentivizing me. Okay, I'm going to get to break even here. All right.
It's a great point that you're making, which is, ultimately these automakers work with ChargeScape to reduce the total cost of ownership of having an EV. There was a very specific reason why they set up ChargeScape, and it's to make EVs cheaper and help them sell more EVs. And so we're still pretty early. And the way that we're doing a lot of the sort of financial payments now is not necessarily deducting it off their lease bill, but typically actually sending them a Venmo payment, a payment to their Venmo or their PayPal account. So in that way, it's like a little bit more instantaneous, and it's a little bit nicer because you actually see the money come into your bank account. But absolutely in the future, I wouldn't rule out these kinds of incentives being kind of stacked at the point of EV purchase or lease in order to just reduce the sticker price or reduce the monthly lease payments.
Because the sticker price has gone up, the $7,500 federal tax credit's gone. So is this an alternative, or what else is being done? So you mentioned that your partners want to increase adoption. You're doing really great software to help increase that adoption. But someone's like, wait, look, $7,500 more. That's a lot of money. Like, what is being done to overcome that? And do you think that, obviously we had to pull forward before the credit went away? Where's EV sales, do you think, going to go, and what are your partners looking to do to stimulate them?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, as you noted, the $7,500 tax credit has gone away. And so frankly, automakers need to just bring down the sticker price of EVs to get them to a place where they're affordable and accessible for all Americans. I think we're seeing a lot of positive signs there. Just a couple of examples. Nissan released their new Leaf EV with a sticker price of under $30,000. That's without the tax credit. So that's one of the cheapest cars in America you can buy right now. Is actually a really nice EV. Ford recently announced a $5 billion investment in a new EV platform that's going to allow them to produce a $30,000 electric pickup truck within the next couple of years. So I think we definitely see automakers getting better at producing EVs at lower cost, right? And part of this is just like the learning curve. As they get better at their supply chains, at producing and manufacturing these things at scale, of course, prices are going to come down. We've seen that for every electronic, right? Whether those were solar panels that used to cost tens of thousands of dollars and the price fell to thousands and even sometimes hundreds of dollars, depending on the size of the panel, to things like smartphones, big flat screen TVs. The prices always sort of come down as manufacturers get better. So we're seeing automakers, I think, take a lot of positive steps in that direction. But then there is this additional element of, okay, well, how can we also reduce the ongoing costs of owning an EV? And look, EVs are already cheaper to drive, right? There's no engine checks, no oil changes that you need to do. They're just naturally cheaper. I drive an EV as well. I've had it for years. The only thing I've ever had to do is replace the windshield wiper fluid. That's all. That's literally it. And the only cost I've ever had is in charging the EV. So automakers are looking really closely at, how can we drive those costs down to zero or close to zero? And so ChargeScape and the smart charging programs that we run with utilities and energy companies across America are, one of the ways we're doing that. We're running actually a really awesome proposition now in Texas with our partner TXU Energy. That's a special initially for Ford drivers, but we're looking to expand that to other brands that offers free at-home EV charging if you're a TXU Energy customer. So imagine buying an EV and knowing that you'll never really pay for anything again, apart from the sticker price or your lease payments, and that all of your charging is going to be free. I always talk about like the parallel to a combustion engine vehicle, right? Imagine buying a combustion engine vehicle and being told at the dealership, yeah, you get free gasoline for life, right? You'll never have to pay for gas. People would be lining up around the block to buy that car. And I think we're going to see something similar with EVs, because ultimately, I think most consumers are rational actors. They're very price conscious. Everyone is very price conscious right now, and consumers are going to be drawn to value. And if you can get a lot of value at the dealership on the sticker price or the lease price, and then get close to free charging for the 2, 3, 4, 5 years that you've got the vehicle, that's incredibly compelling. And I think ultimately Americans are going to vote with their wallets.
It's a conversation I've had over the last 2 weeks, if you want to call sticker shock. My father-in-law, he's retired. He goes on and on and on and on about the price of an oil change. And he's calling this guy, and then he said, I'm going to violate the warranty. And I said, F the warranty, just go to the cheapest place and call it a day. And I said, oh, this is why you should have bought an electric car. He's like, there's no oil change? I said, no, there's no oil change. You're going to save several $100s with this thing and making it, it's just a better car. They're more reliable. They're better than internal combustion engine. That's my personal opinion, and I love my EVs. But another leg of the stool, which we've all run into as EV owners, the stinking cost of insurance that goes from, and this, it's widely varies. Let's just say insurance company A is triple versus in company B, and they're all household names. They're all legitimate. How do we fix that problem? So you're doing a really good job with the incentives around charging. Your OEM partners are making great, reliable products. But then how do we get this insurance to come under control? Because I call and I yell at them. They say, well, the cost to repair this. I say, yeah, but look at all the safety features. They go, that's not the point, sir. That's not the point. How do we solve that?
Yeah, it's a fair point. Yeah, I think something probably that's a little bit outside the realm of charging and what charging can do. But as you said, as you noted, I think EVs have got a lot of advanced safety features that insurers need to kind of wake up to. I mean, I've certainly, I may be in the minority here, but as an EV driver, I've actually seen my insurance costs go down over the past few years rather than up. And I don't know whether that's a good driver discount or something, but they do seem to be kind of reaching price parity. And look, I think there's probably some education needed on the insurer side as well around EVs and how safe they are. That should ultimately be reflected in insurance prices, particularly as adoption levels continue to increase and EVs are no longer kind of a niche type of car that Americans are driving.
No, at some point, you and I will both agree that they're going to become a mainstream product. It's like, oh, you mean you had to go to a gas station? I had to go to a gas station. I had to put air in my tires. Like, this is the weirdest feeling in the world. Why am I here? I don't want to go there. But they become mainstream. What do you think has to be done from if you want to call it an industry education standpoint, where there's charging anxiety? Is the charger going to work? Is it not going to work? What has to be done from a industry standpoint to say, no, wait, actually, there's software now. This problem has been solved, or it's getting better. It's not the old days where plugs broke and this is broken. Though, if you want to call them, the nightmare era is now over.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. I mean, I think there's a couple things. First, there's the at-home charging part, and data from our platform and Department of Energy data, there's plenty of statistics out there, show that about 80% of EV charging in America happens at home. So number one thing is improving the home charging experience. I think we're seeing a lot of automakers, including Ford with their Power Promise, and Honda has rolled out something similar, now offer a free EV charger and at-home installation of that charger whenever you purchase or lease the vehicle, which is a great way to kind of get the consumer set up with the right EV charging equipment for when they need to hard charge at home, which is going to be most of the time. Then, of course, ChargeScape is working and the software in the background to make sure that that charge is delivered reliably and with the cheapest electricity possible. Then there's the other 20% of charging that happens away from home, most of the time in public at what we call fast chargers, right? Tesla supercharging stations, Electrify America. What needs to happen there, frankly, number one, there just needs to be more chargers. And number two, we need to make sure that those chargers are built with reliable equipment and reliable firmware. I think a lot of the public charging experience was probably tainted by some of the early charging stations that were built now like 5-7 years ago that, just weren't built with like the greatest equipment and necessarily the greatest software either. I have seen public charging networks, I think, learn a lot and seemingly adapt a lot from those early days and roll out much better public charging stations. I think actually there's a good example. There is another joint venture called Iona that includes some of our investors plus a few other automakers that's building out, I think, 30,000 fast charging ports across the US. They just announced a new site in California recently, but they're in, I think, over a dozen states at this point. And this is automakers really investing in the public charging experience, making sure, number one, that they're using the highest quality equipment. Number two, that the software is reliable and also very easy to use for the customer. I believe Iona's network runs on a protocol called plug and charge, which means like even if you don't have a Tesla, any kind of car can plug into Iona. It knows your car. Your car is associated with an account and a credit card, and you just plug in and charge immediately. There's no need to fiddle with an app or and try to insert your credit card and the reader doesn't work. This is the kind of charging experience that Americans expect. And I think we're seeing automakers really invest and try to deliver that for Americans.
And they don't expect it. They demand it at the end of the day because they see what Tesla's been able to do with their charging. As charging grows both in the home and out of the home, are there any policy issues that still have to be overcome? Because I know at home, certain towns, there's permitting issues that you have to go through. And then obviously when you're out of the home for high-speed charging, there's permitting issues. Are there any major policy hurdles that still need to be overcome for charging to truly scale?
Yeah, I mean, I think you used the key word, which is permitting. So much of infrastructure requires permitting, right? And it's not just for EV chargers, it's for everything, right? It's building new buildings, building power plants, upgrading the grid in certain parts. We hear about permitting, I think, every day across different topics. And so whether that is faster permitting to get public charging stations built faster, I think that's really important. And I certainly hear from my colleagues at Iona that they can actually sort of buy a site, right, and have the land, but then be waiting like a year for the local jurisdiction to issue the permit to actually do the construction or establish sort of the grid interconnection that's needed to supply the site. On the at-home charging side, it's generally a little bit easier. I mean, the great thing is that you can charge pretty fast at home using a standard 240 volt outlet, which most American homes have got. That's 240 volts is what you use for your tumble dryer. So a lot of homes have already got kind of the wiring and the panel to support that level of charge. And just for reference, depending on how big your EV battery is, on a 240 volt charger, you can pretty much fill up your battery somewhere between 4 and 6 hours. So like very easily overnight, you could like completely charge your battery. I think where we're seeing maybe some policies that could be a little bit more EV friendly is on the grid interconnection side. So I talked before about some consumers now are actually exporting power back to the grid from their EV batteries through a technology called vehicle to grid. And certainly in certain parts of the country, there are regulations that require you to get permission from your utility before doing that. It's called an interconnection request. And those requests can take a while to actually get the utility's permission. I'd love to see legislation that speeds that up to enable more electric vehicles to participate in vehicle to grid and get consumers saving a bit more money.
It's always the hurry up and wait show, and it's new emerging technology that can disrupt something. I'll leave it at that. Looking out to 2030, it's a hop, skip, and a jump away. What do you envision vehicle to grid looking like? Do we start to have some significant scale then?
Yeah, look, I think people have been talking about vehicle to grid for a long time, and frankly, not much has happened. I do think we are at an inflection point now, and I genuinely believe this. If you look at the range of electric vehicles that are now available in the market, from the Ford F-150 Lightning to the Nissan Leaf to the Kia EV6 and EV9, even to the most recent Tesla Cybertruck, and I believe future Teslas as well, they are going to have that capability to export back to the power grid. So there is a hardware component. The vehicle needs to be manufactured with certain equipment to enable it to export its battery power back to the grid. And we're finally seeing vehicles come to market at an affordable price point that enables that. So I think that's probably been the biggest barrier to date. And now that capability is really sort of becoming mainstream among all of the major automakers, I do think we're going to start to see a lot of that. I do think as well that all of the demand coming from data centers has really, frankly, sparked some urgency among utilities to look to every possible source of power generation, including EV batteries. And I'm starting to see utilities also take a more, I would say, pragmatic approach and also just general interest in standing up programs that enable this vehicle to grid export and reward EV drivers for the power that they export back to the grid from their EV batteries when the grid needs it.
It's a powerful thing. You and I know if vehicle to grid is going to scale, and you're going to have more global OEMs, not just domestic OEMs, that are going to embrace it. And then I think once consumers understand the financial benefits of it, aha, hey, all right, away we go. And then they start blabbing to their friend, I saved all this money this month because, and then it starts taking off, and we're getting there. And ChargeScape is going to play a very large role and potentially be the backbone to enable that to scale, because it comes down to convenience, and you need really good software to do that. Joseph, this has been a fascinating conversation. As we look to wrap up, what would you like our listeners to take away with them today?
Well, I think it'd be good for them to take away the fact that automakers are getting really serious about electric vehicles, EV adoption. There has really not been much of a retreat at all in their EV commitments. If anything, I see a lot of automakers doubling down on their investments in electric vehicles, bringing new, cheaper models to market. Some of those are complemented by plug-in hybrids. Some of those are full battery electric. And automakers, even beyond the range of models that they offer on the market, are investing further in improving the charging experience for EV drivers, whether that's at home with ChargeScape or away from home with Iona, making the charging experience cheaper, simpler, generally more affordable for their consumers, to make EVs as affordable as possible to own and drive.
And if you're on the fence thinking about, well, I don't want to get an EV because the experience might be bad, I'm telling you, as an EV owner, the experience is great. What ChargeScape is doing, they're making charging great. Today is tomorrow, tomorrow is today, the future is ChargeScape. Joseph, thank you so much for coming on SAE Tomorrow Today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to SAE Tomorrow Today. If you've enjoyed this episode and would like to hear more, please kindly rate, review, and let us know what topics you'd like for us to explore next. Be sure to join us next week as we explore how global automakers are driving U.S. growth, from factories and workforce to technology and trade.
SAE International makes no representations as to the accuracy of the information presented in this podcast. The information and opinions are for general information only. SAE International does not endorse, approve, recommend, or certify any information, product, process, service, or organization presented or mentioned in this podcast.